A very good morning, students. Today we are going to see an interesting and inspiring poem titled A River by A.K. Ramanujan. Before entering into the poem, let's have some kind of knowledge idea about the author. Have an author introduction. Atipat Krishnaswamy Ramanujan is the full name of A.K. Ramanujan. A.K. Ramanujan was born March 16, 1929 and died July 13, 1993. He is a scholar of Indian literature. He wrote in both English and Kannada. A.K. Ramanujan was an Indian poet, scholar, an author, a philologist, folklorist, translator, poet, and playwright. He is a versatile personality. He is the predominant writer in Indian writing in English. A.K. Ramanujan was born into a Brahmin family in Mysore city. His father, Atipat Azuri Krishnaswamy, was a professor of mathematics at Mysore University and he was an astronomer too. Ramanujan was educated at Marimallappa's High School and Maharaja College of Mysore. In college, A.K. Ramanujan took science major in his first year. First, his father changed his major from science to English. He was educated in English at the Mysore University and received his PhD in linguistics from Indiana University. In 1976, the Government of India awarded him the honorific title Padma Shri. A.K. Ramanujan is one of the major writers in Indian writing English. He is a multi-talented person. We can see the Indianness in his literary works. I hope it's enough about the author A.K. Ramanujan. Let's enter into the poem A River, written by A.K. Ramanujan. So this poem River has 4 stanzas. Let's see one by one. Let me read the first stanza. Listen carefully. Let me read the first stanza. Understand and in Madurai, city of temples and poets, who sang of cities and temples, every summer, a river dries to a trickle in the sand, bearing the sand reefs, straw and women's hair, clocking the water gates at the rusty bars, under the bridges with patches of repair all over them, the wet stones glistening like sleepy crocodiles, the dry ones shaven water buffaloes launching in the sun. The poets only sang of the floods. I hope you have listened the first stanza. Let's see the meaning of the first stanza. The first line indicates the background of the poem, or is the place located. It's in Madurai. Madurai, it is part of Tamil Nadu. It's known for temple and poets. Even the history that we have studied, in Madurai, our forefathers have established sanghas and they have developed Tamil. See here, in Madurai, city of temples and poets, who sang of cities and temples. The author, A.K. Ramanujan, says that the poets portrayed the glories of Madurai. They consider Madurai is a city of temples and poets. And they have written poetry on the positive sides of Madurai. But here, A.K. Ramanujan wants to give the other side of Madurai, especially focusing on the river. Yes, we know the very famous river runs in Madurai is Vaigai. Though it is not mentioned here, but is indirectly mentioning a river is Vaigai river. Okay, let's continue. Every summer, a river dries to a trickle. So, poets, they have described the beauty of rivers even during the floods. They have described the enchantment of the river, the beauty of river. But here we can see the author wants to describe the summer season, how the river will be in the summer season. Every summer, a river Vaigai will be dried. Okay, a river dries to a trickle in the sand, bearing the sand drips. This is sand drips. You can see if there is no water in the river, we can see number of sand drips. A river dries to a trickle. Trickle is nothing, a very thin river. When there is no water, or if there is a little water, it will go as a very thin river. It is called trickle. So in the summer season, the river dries to a trickle in the sand, bearing the sand drips. Straw and women's hair blocking the water gates. At the rusty bows under the bridges with patches to repair all over them. He is giving a kind of additional information, adding more points to his argument, telling that straws and women's hairs will be there in the river and it will clog the water gates, which will make the rusty bows under the bridges, which has to be mended, repaired. So it brings that effect. It creates such problems during the summer season. He gives another information in the summer season. When there is no water in the river, wet stones glistening like sleepy crocodiles, and dry ones, shaven water buffaloes launching in the sun. The poets only sang of the floods. You can see the image. The iron, which does not have a water flow, or if it is left after water flowing, sure it will become very rusty one and we have to mend it. So that's what's mentioned by A.K. Ramanujan. The next one you can see here, a wet stone is compared with crocodiles. How crocodiles are there, the same way the wet stones will be in the summer season like a crocodiles. The next imagery A.K. Ramanujan puts forth in front of us is dry stones is compared with buffaloes. How buffaloes are relaxing themselves inside the river. The same way these dry stones are there during the summer season. Launching, which means relaxing. How a buffalo relax and launches in the sun. The same way these dry stones are compared with a shaven water buffaloes. The poets only sang of the floods. So there are so many things are there, but these poets, A.K. Ramanujan says, the poets, even the older poets and the new poets, they only have written poetry on the positive sides of floods. But he is telling there are other sides that we have to look into. So this is the way that A.K. Ramanujan has described the river during the summer season in the first stanza. I hope you have understood the first stanza. Let's enter to second stanza. Let me read the second stanza. He was there for a day when they had the floods. People everywhere talked of the inches rising of the precise number of coupled steps, run over by the water rising on the bathing places, and the way it carried off 3 village houses, one pregnant woman, and a couple of cows named Gobi and Brinda as usual. In the second stanza, A.K. Ramanujan describes the situation and circumstances of the flood. When there is a flood, how people will react, what will happen, what are the catastrophe will be taken place. Everything is described in the second stanza. Let's see line by line. He was there for a day. He here refers to the poet, the author A.K. Ramanujan. He was there for a day when they had floods. Listen carefully. When there was a flood, he went to Madurai and he has witnessed how the flood has affected the people. People everywhere talked of the inches rising. Yes, when there is a flood, you can see how it increases inch by inch in the river. And we can easily find out people were used to take bath in the river. Even if there are some steps, the water level will be increased during the flood. That's what given in the next 2 lines. Of the precise number of coupled steps run over by the water rising on the bathing places. Along with these, A.K. Ramanujan gives few more catastrophic events takes place during the flood. Let's see here. And the way it carried off 3 village houses, one pregnant woman and a couple of cows named Gobi and Brinda as usual. So he is criticizing the poets, one who has sung the beauty of the river. A.K. Ramanujan shows the other side of the river. He picturizes the other side of the river Vaigai. During the flood, it not only rises but also it destroyed 3 village houses, and even it has carried one pregnant woman and a couple of cows. The name of the cows are Gobi and Brinda. In Indian context, we always consider cows as a symbol of prosperity. In some cases, people used to worship cows. But now, here you can see the cows are thrown away in the river. The cows couldn't bear the force of river water, the flood. So everything goes in the river. You can see the image. Just imagine that. How we can bear it. How we can bear and overcome this catastrophe, flood. It is very difficult. See the next image. Some of us have witnessed the flood, maybe nearby our areas. People had suffered a lot during the flood. The flood has created, the flood has made people homeless, moneyless, lifeless. Let's enter into the third stanza. The new poet still quoted the old poets, but no one spoke in verse of the pregnant woman drowned, with perhaps twins in her, kicking at blank walls even before birth. A.K. Ramanujan has criticized not only the old poets, even the new poets. So new poets are copying the old poets, or is following the tradition of the old poets. They are not setting any new trends. So it has been criticized by A.K. Ramanujan, and he worries that no one has written poetry, no one has spoken about this pregnant woman who has drowned during the flood. And he is telling that perhaps the pregnant woman might have twins in her womb, but before the birth, the twins, they have died. They died. The negative side of the flood, as well as the dangers of the flood, has been portrayed in the realistic manner by A.K. Ramanujan. He worries about these poets, one who forgot to write about these things. So he is describing all those things in the third stanza. Let's move to the fourth stanza. Let me read the fourth stanza. Listen carefully. He said, the river has water enough to be poetic, but about only once a year, and then it carries away in the first half hour 3 village houses, a couple of cows named Gobi and Brinda, and one pregnant woman expecting identical twins with no moles on their bodies, with different colored diapers to tell them apart. So he said, the poet author A.K. Ramanujan said, the river has water enough to be poetic about only once a year. What he says that people may write poetry in the positive side of the river during the flood. Maybe it happens only once in a year. But there is the other side. And then it carries away in the first half hour 3 village houses. It has destroyed village houses. The flood has destroyed village houses. A couple of cows named Gobi and Brinda. So A.K. Ramanujan is extending the catastrophe in the fourth stanza and the dangerousness of the flood in the fourth stanza, and is creating a sympathy, pity over these witnessed people like cows and pregnant women and people, those who lost their houses in the village. See here, and one pregnant woman expecting identical twins with no moles on their bodies, with different colored diapers to tell them apart. So what he tries to convey is that there may be twins in the womb of the pregnant woman. Even they may not have a small mole on their bodies in order to differentiate them. Such a twins, we can only differentiate them with the colored diapers. It is the blessing of the pregnant woman, but She has lost everything because of flood. So the whole poem A.K. Ramanujan has described the river Vaigai located in Madurai, not in the positive way, but the other side of the river, especially the other side of the flood, the impact of the flood, how it bring dangers to the people, how it bring catastrophe to the people, how it molested the life of the people, how it destroyed the life of the people. Everything has been portrayed in this poem A River by A.K. Ramanujan. Guys, today we have seen the literal meaning of the poem. Still, we did not analyze. Let's see, let us analyze the poem. What are the techniques that he has used, A.K. Ramanujan has used in this poem? What are the figures of speech that he has used? What are the inner meaning of it? So all those things we will discuss in the next class. I think it's enough today. Thank you. We will meet in the next class. Thank you so much.